This week, the U.S., Israel, and Iran have reached what's being described as a limited two-week ceasefire following 32 days of Operation Epic Fury. What should we expect to happen next? And will diplomacy be enough to hold the ceasefire together? With analysis, I'm joined by Middle East policy expert Dr. Walid Phares, co-host of the War and Freedom podcast. Walid, this operation is a month old now. Estimates put the combined death toll somewhere around 3,500. Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and U.S. gas prices here have crossed $4 a gallon for the first time since 2022. Will this two-week ceasefire hold, and what is the goal here?
First of all, will it hold? It depends really this time on the Islamic regime in Iran, because they are the ones who sought this engagement, because they know and they saw that the combined power of the United States and of Israel at the same time took out most of the strategic arms of that regime. No Navy, no Air Force, 80% of the ballistic is gone, 60 to 70% of the first level leaders of the Islamic regime are gone, in addition to, of course, the credibility of the Islamic Republic. So what they're trying to do, that's the Khomeinis, whomever is calling the shots on the inside of the IRGC, is to gain time. If time to be gained is done through negotiations, they will. But it's not going to be an easy negotiation.
Just days before this ceasefire, I mean, we were, I guess, on the brink of what can only be described as Armageddon. I mean, President Trump posted on Trump's social, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again," end quote. He had told reporters the day before that he was prepared to destroy Iran's civilian power plants and bridges if no deal was reached. When you heard those words, what went through your mind and the minds of the Iranian people, do you think?
In my own mind, I knew what he meant. He meant not the Iranian, Persian historical civilization. He meant the jihadists. He meant their caliphate. He meant basically the Khomeinis Islamist regime. They would be gone forever. That's his threat. Second, with regard to the population, he already has told the Iranians, let's remember, you and I spoke about it a few weeks ago. Go to the streets, seize your institutions, and even fight back. So it is clear to me that he wants the people to be saved, the regime to be destroyed. Now, of course, he put it in a dramatic way, as he does all the time. Right. But the Iranian people, despite what he said, the actual Iranian people, they want him to do anything he can to save them.
Do you think that what some would call reckless language, that actually brought them to the negotiating table in a way they might not have otherwise?
What brought them to the negotiating table is the effects of his powerful military. It's Pete Hegseth and our intelligence communities who destroyed basically what the regime can use. That convinced them. And they did math, real math. The combination between the U.S. and Netanyahu's government in Lebanon against Hezbollah, that means the end of their civilization. So they wanted to stop it, to slow it, to negotiate, but they're not going to actually go where the president wants them to go. That's my prognostic.
Before I get to my next question about negotiations, who is the U.S. really dealing with here, Walid, and how credible are these people who are allegedly the Iranian leadership?
Where the Iranian leadership, meaning the Khomeinis, come from is a combo of the IRGC, meaning the heads of the militias, the head of the SS in World War II language, but also you have the people of the money, the billionaires, the trillionaires inside the regime. Remember, this is a regime that has been making a lot of money from the Obama years, Iran deal, and the Biden years. A lot of money came in. So they are in discussions, internal discussions among each other to see how to approach the Trump administration and how to make sure that the Israelis are not going to continue their action against Hezbollah.
Iran's foreign minister told Al Jazeera that he's been in communication with Steve Witkoff, who's the president's representative here, but that Iran has no faith that negotiations with the U.S. will yield results. The Iranian president told the European Council president that Iran has the will to end the war, but needs guarantees. Walid, how will diplomacy now work? And what are Tehran's non-negotiable conditions?
You and I have used a term, and I explained it many times over the years, called taqiyya, which is a ruse, which is basically a camouflage. And the Khomeinist ideology, you know, legitimized that term, meaning, in other words, they lie. They tell their own people that they're not going to make concessions so that they are still with them and, you know, do not go away. They tell the Europeans, oh, it's the fault of the Trump administration, they're not serious. And then they tell the Trump administration through these envoys, and I would even say those go in between the brokers, that, yeah, they are serious. They will offer the president, but they have to tell something to their public. So the bottom line, we go back to square one, Raymond. It's time. They want to buy time. They'll do anything to buy time, even trying to convince their foes, us, that they are serious, but then telling their own people, the militias, that this is just a tactic.
Yeah, interestingly enough, Israel insisted that Lebanon be carved out of the ceasefire, Walid. Why is that? And what does Netanyahu gain by keeping that front open and continuing Israeli strikes there?
Well, the question is, Raymond, why would a regime, an Islamist regime, at 1,000 kilometers away, want to get involved in an operation that has nothing to do with Iran in Lebanon? Because that could go also to be true with the Houthis in Yemen. So if the Israelis accept not to go after Hezbollah in Lebanon across their border, then the regime will say, oh, the Houthis also, I don't want you to touch the Houthis. I don't want you to touch the militias, the Iranian, the Islamic regime militias in Iraq. And it could go all the way to, guess where, to Gaza, to Hamas. So the regime has no right to restrain Israel that is fighting its own enemies. But President Trump is telling them, no, we have not covered that. At the same time, he told Prime Minister Netanyahu to go easier at this point in time.
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps murdered more than 30,000 of its own people before American and Israeli strikes began, Walid. Iran has shut off the internet to virtually the entire population. Is there now a legitimate opening for the Iranian people to rise? What needs to happen now for a real revolution to occur? And remember, these people are unarmed.
You know, I don't want to say it's funny, but it's odd that the moment when they are ready, we are not inside. So for an Iranian revolution to win, you need to have both things. For the French resistance to win, they need to have a landing in Normandy, and both together have defeated the Nazis in France. So the regime knows what they're doing. They know that millions of Iranians, not tens of thousands, millions will be ready to take to the streets, and tens of thousands will be ready to, if they are armed, to fight. That's why they reached out to the United States. Remember in the beginning of the dialogue between you and me, I said, well, the regime knew that if they don't now paralyze the American action or engage the American action, they know that their civilians, their people, will be armed and will attack. See, these are the 2 points that we need to be very, very focusing on. Should we arm the Iranian people? Should we give them the legitimacy? I vote that yes, that's the only way to make sure that the regime will go down. The only way.
If this regime falls, who or what fills the vacuum, Walid? I mean, last time we saw this kind of power collapse in the region, we got ISIS. So we know Iran is not Iraq, but it has 70, 80 million people, a sophisticated, educated class, a diaspora. What does a post-Islamic Republic Iran look like? And is there a plan for peace?
I would say with confidence that 80% of these 90 million people are against the regime. They're not necessarily for somebody against somebody else. Then they will divide into political parties. We know that there are some leaders, other than others, who have the confidence or the vote of the people. There are also ethnic and religious minorities. Iran will become a diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-religious country, but the regime is not going to go down that easily. It's going to probably become like a militia like Hezbollah and go into war against the next government, which will be free, which will be pro-American, pro-Western. And yes, you're right, will be very modernizing with a return of a large segment of the Iranian diaspora, including from the United States.
There's an odd story that broke this week. According to reporting in the Free Press, senior Pentagon officials, including Undersecretary of War and Policy Elbridge Colby, held a closed-door meeting with Cardinal Christophe Pierre. Now, he was, up until recently, the papal nuncio to the U.S. And in that meeting, officials allegedly said America has the military power to do whatever it wants to in the world. The Catholic Church had better take its side, end quote. Then one official was said to have invoked the Avignon papacy, which is the 14th century episode where the French monarchy used the threat of force to manipulate the Pope. Walid, I want to ask you about this, but there's a bit of clarity that just dropped. Ambassador Brian Birch, who is Trump's ambassador to the Vatican, just posted this. I'm pleased to speak today with His Eminence Cardinal Christophe Pierre. As expected, he confirmed the recent media characterizations of his meeting with Undersecretary Colby are fabrications and were just invented. My question is, what do you make of this whole episode, Walid? And this diplomatic gambit? I mean, I guess what emerges to my mind is it shows the Vatican is still a relevant player here and that they went out to the Vatican to seek their counsel.
Absolutely. Actually, I'll start with the last point you made even before I am part of this interview. The United States government, this administration in particular, is a conservative administration, and it includes prayer openly, actually, for anybody who wants, the Pentagon, everywhere else. So there is no reason to imagine other than a fabrication, as we heard from you right now. And behind the fabrication, you could find a lot of the far left, a lot of the supporters of the Iran deal, those who want to create a wedge between the Catholic Church and also the United States, knowing that we have millions and millions of Catholics here. Millions among them are serving in our armed forces. So this looks like a manipulated matter to create that wedge between the two parties, but the two parties are smart enough, old enough, especially the Vatican, to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I didn't quite buy this story the way it was reported because there was a alleged journalist, a guy who's run for office as a Democrat, who was kind of legitimizing this story. And I thought, look, you're always in a bad position when you're trying to align papal teaching with a particular policy prescription. The church will always be at odds with either party on policy. The church sets forth a moral high ground, an ideal that is to be observed, and both parties are going to fail to meet it in every way. But you need that moral ideal advanced. And I always worry when people try to turn the Pope into a partisan on one side or the other. There was a story today that he met, he ran over his time in a private meeting with David Axelrod, the Democratic strategist under Obama. What that means, I don't know, but there are some trying to say, oh, look, he's taking his marching orders. I take all of that with a grain of salt. But look, in the U.S., there's a controversy in Florida over a proposed domestic terrorism bill. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, has organized protests against it. They're saying such a bill would create a police state. Walid, you've written extensively on CAIR, its origins, the relationship to the Muslim Brotherhood. What exactly is this Florida legislation? And does CAIR's opposition to domestic terrorism protection cause you concern?
Well, of course, I am among the first ones since the 90s. I had encounters with that organization called CAIR, which in fact is a front to the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're not shy to say that. CAIR has been trying to obstruct any awareness by the American people, including all religions, about jihadism. They want to cover up jihadism. I tried in my first book, post 9/11 book, to say, well, jihadism is an ideology. We're not dealing with theologies. Nobody's in America, the majority are not, about this religion or the other religion, but CAIR is. CAIR is fighting a battle along with the Islamists across the United States to legitimize the jihadists. They are the ones who are pushing for charge of Islamophobia. Islamophobia is a weapon by the jihadists to stop the critique of these jihadists. So what happened is that in Florida, and I think in Texas as well, the authorities, the government, the local state have realized the threat of the expansion of that ideology. And that's why they have these legislations, and that's why CAIR is opposing them.
Before we run out of time, Walid, when the clock runs out on the 2 weeks that we are now in the middle of, this 2-week ceasefire, what are the things necessary for stability in Iran, and is there a genuine off-ramp that ends in freedom for the Iranian people?
I know how the Iranian people are gonna rise, will rise, and will defeat the regime. I know that we have the capabilities of helping them. What I don't know now at this point in your show, how we're gonna build that bridge. At this point in time, we have allowed the Islamic regime in Iran to take time. How long that time would be before we discover, all of us, including our administration, our Congress, that they are playing, that they are maneuvering, that length of time is what would worry me.
Okay, Walid Phares, always enlightening. You can catch the War and Freedom podcast at War Freedom on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Walid, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Raymond.